Okay, I think we may or may not be on the air. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to kind of check it out. Can everybody hear me? Test 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. And all right, we're just gonna go ahead and shoot from the hip, as they say. Hey guys, this is Ibis Fernandez with ToonTitan.com. Today is the first day that we're going to be trying something new on the channel. I am taking your files, your questions, everything you send me throughout the week, and I'm putting together these Fix It Fridays from now on. Depending on how much stuff you guys send me, I'll put together a little stream, 1, 2, maybe 3 hours long if time allows. I will try to get through everybody's projects and answer y'all questions like that. Today I only have one project. This comes from Chase. He's currently working on a character, G2 character. He was following one of my tutorials earlier, and he seems to have gotten stuck. So he asked me to take a look, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's see here. So basically he sent me the flash file, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to that next. If I can figure out how to do that. I'm still getting a hang of the streaming software. Here's flash. So I did open up the file in order to get the screenshot out there, but I haven't actually taken a look at it yet. So we're gonna be taking a look at this live at the same time as everybody else. Okay, so apparently the sound sounds good. What about the background music? Is that too loud? Is that too small? Can you not hear it? Okay. Not getting any feedback on that, so I guess we'll just find out. They'll send me an update. Okay, so here we go. So this is the character that Chase is developing. Let's see here. I'm not able to click on anything. Oh, here we go. Not sure what these are. Seem to be like the joints or guides for joints. There's some loose items there. And let's see here. All right, let's take a look at and see what's going on in the timeline. Looks like he's got everything separated into multiple layers. He's got things set up in different layers. Classical Flash animators and Flash artists will tend to divide everything up into different layers for just management reasons. Basically, with Toon Titan and G2 characters, this is not necessary, but if you find it easier to separate everything into their own layers for, you know, for file management purposes or whatever, then by all means continue to do that. So let's see here. So he's got a layer named joint, and I'm gonna hide everything to see what's going on here. All right, so he's got a layer named joint with some rough drafting outlines, and he's got several of these little things in here. He's created his own joints, which I definitely suggest that you do whenever possible. They're kind of weird. Like these have the, like this is not an actual circle. I mean, if you're gonna be you doing the joints, you gotta keep in mind you gotta work within a circle. You can't just make a circle and squeeze it. Then you've kind of gone outside of the purpose behind it. You know, it's the joint regions are perfect circles basically. So if you're gonna be squeezing them, then you kind of lose track of what your joint region actually is, and you kind of set yourself up for misalignment issues. Let's see here. Orlando, perfect. Awesome. Awesome, Orlando. Glad you can join us, man. If you have any questions while I'm analyzing this thing here, feel free to chime in. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Um, Now the joints themselves, I mean, whenever you're gonna create a joint for your character, you got to keep in mind that we're trying to come up with a perfect circular shape because your your arm or your leg or whatever is gonna have to pivot around this circular region. So you can't have any of these stuff outside, and you definitely can't have your circle squeezed. You got to keep it perfect. So I'm gonna show you how to draw a perfect joint for a starting point. Hold down the shift key when you draw. That creates a perfect circle. And ideally, you probably want to use some subtle color. I like to use like a transparent type color for my fill, just so I can distinguish it. And that gives me like a perfect circle. I held down the shift key while I drew my circle, and that created a perfect circle. The next thing that I'm gonna do, and these 45-degree angle lines, they're perfectly fine. If you draw with the shift key pressed on your keyboard, you can actually create those very easily. What I'm gonna do though is I created two separate ones, and I'm gonna group it, and I'm gonna take the other one and group it. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take these two, hit Control K on my keyboard to bring up the align panel. I'm gonna remove the align to stage option, and I'm just gonna align these to the center of each other. That gives me like a perfect X. I'm gonna group those two items together so it treats them like that. So now I'm gonna bring it in here, and right away I can see I have some kind of weird stuff going on. You know what? I'm gonna backtrack just one little bit. I'm gonna make sure that these two lines are exactly the same size, just so I don't end up with misalignment issues. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that one, duplicate it, do that, and now I'm gonna align them together, group them back together. So now I know these two lines are exactly the same size, and I'm gonna take those three objects, I'm gonna align those together so that they're all aligning themselves at the exact center of that circle. Once this has been done, I'm gonna break it apart, Control B on everything until it's broken up into its own independent pieces. Hey Chase, how's it going, man? So let's take a look at your project, man. I'm currently going through the joint system. If you have any questions while I'm doing this, you know, feel free to send them my way. So what I'm doing with this joint system here is I remove all the extra stuff. That prevents like any of the measurements from going off the sides and stuff. I'm not sure if one side is longer than the other, so I just want to make sure that we don't end up with that issue. So I'm going to select that one, hit F8. I'm going to call it maybe blah, whatever, it doesn't matter. Make sure that the registration point is right at the center, and now we've created a nice little joint that we can use as our reference point for these type of joints. So that was one of the first mistakes that I kind of see here, that these probably weren't created like to the optimal way of doing it. They're not exactly circular, so you know the alignment is gonna be off, and these extra things on the sides, they kind of fall outside of the circular region, so that could affect your measurements and stuff like that and the way you do things. Okay, so let's see what else we have that may be happening here. I'm going to revert this file. The screen froze. Was it my screen that froze, or is it back on now? Or is it still frozen? Okay. Send me your feedback. Somebody said that the screen froze, so is it still frozen? Okay, so it might be some the bandwidth on your end, sir. Maybe hit that F5 function key on your keyboard. It might refresh it and start the stream back up. It might just be like internet issues. Okay, so let's take a look at what else we have going on here. Joints, we got some rough drafting going on, and we have everything else in independent layers apparently. So what's going on here? Let's unlock these, see what we have. Okay, so this is one solid character. This is never gonna work. I mean, you have to create body parts in order to make this character move. I mean, this already is not gonna work. So okay, so basically what you would have to do, well, what else did you have? Because let's see what else is going on here. Let's take a look at your joints. Control F3. This is set up to be a pivot. Why is it set up to be a pivot? Forearm pivot, hand nud no, I'm not sure how these names got on here, but if these are the pivots, did you edit the pivot? Maybe you try to use Puppet Producer before and you renamed the pivots and you modified, and those weren't joint regions after all? Is that what happened? Let's see here. Let's look at your library, see what you have in here. You have something called joint, which is that circle. Whenever you do these joint things, keep that registration point in the center. I'm not sure. I mean, there might be something odd in the way that you used Puppet Producer, because if you had in fact used Puppet Producer, we would see a body part and your pivot. In your library, I'm looking at your library here. I don't see any pivots. I don't see the nuds themselves, although I do see the naming convention on these things. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. Let's see here. These are a lot of duplicate symbols. Yeah, no, there's really nothing that indicates to me that Puppet Producer was used aside from the names. See, when you use Puppet Producer, what happens is, I'm going to erase whatever configurations those are. Let's say that this is your neck, and if I click on the neck region, notice what happened. There's a lot of things that happened. One, it created something called a pivot right here. It's this little red dot. It also created something called a nud, which should be, oh, no, the nud only gets created when you do the head and the hands and the feet. So the nud doesn't get created yet. It'll be created later. So here's the foot. That's one. See how it created this pivot and then that blue nud? If we see it there, that's our nud right there. So they show up inside of your library, and they also show up inside of your stage. So now I'm thinking, I mean, maybe you try to edit this pivot and you replaced it with the joint region, maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe double check your Puppet Producer installation. Go into a Flash and open up a new project, and this will be the easiest way to test it. So we're gonna create just a rectangle. We're gonna turn that rectangle into a symbol. All right. Now, part of the testing is that the pivot needs to be placed exactly wherever the registration point is. So I'm going to double click on this, and I'm just going to adjust the placing of this rectangle so that this thing is right there. So it's more predictable as to where I want it. So basically, if everything is installed correctly as far as Puppet Producer, I do know that some laptops are really slow, so they might not put the pivot in the exact spot. That has to do with speed if you're using a really old machine. But here's my square. If I take this square and I'll click on this upper arm, boom. So what it did is it created this pivot, and it placed it exactly where the little registration point is. So check on that and see if it does it. Well, before you reinstall it, check on this first. See if this happens when you do that. Because basically that's what's supposed to happen. It's gonna take one of these pivots. It's gonna place it exactly where the registration point is. The pivot itself will have this naming convention, left arm 0 pivot, which is kind of consistent with what you have on your project. Oh, you had, I erased it. And then of course the body part itself, this is the upper arm. This will say left arm 0, and it'll have an associated pivot, left arm 0 pivot. So there's going to be two parts for every body part. One is the actual part, and the other one is the rotation point, the pivot. So, and I mean, and that's the best way to test it. If it does that, then it's working fine, and it's probably something else that's going on. As far as the way that it was set up. And I'll go back to that project, and I'll give you some tips on how to take what you've drawn and convert it into a character. So no worries there. So basically, I'm gonna draw a quick stick figure. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen those, those kung fu fighting stick figures on YouTube and stuff. I'm gonna show you how to do a really quick one using Puppet Producer and the whole workflow. I think that'll probably be the easiest way to just kind of refresh on how Puppet Producer is used. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna draw some basic elements. I'm gonna draw a head. These are the main components that you're going to need for a character. You're going to need a head. You're going to need a neck. You're going to need an upper body, a torso, if you will. You're going to need a hip area. You're going to need the upper arm, a forearm, and you're gonna need the hands. All right, and you're gonna need the leg, the thigh, the shin, and the foot. Okay, what I'm gonna do, and I'm only gonna do the a half of it, because the other for the other half I just duplicate, save myself a little bit of time. I'm going to take that head, convert it to a symbol, press the F8 function key. Now, for the pivot point, I want that head to rotate like somewhere along the neck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little square thing, the registration point, and make sure it's over here where the neck is going to go. In order to do that, the easiest way to do it is just double click on it. Have everything selected and just kind of shift up until you get it aligned where you want that head to rotate. Once you have it, double click to go outside, and now you have a head with the little registration point right there. So now if we test it, we can see that this head rotates like this, right? Okay, so that's just the easiest thing to keep in mind, all right? And of course, when you're creating a real character for yourself, you know, be detailed with it. Make a pretty head, you know, add some facial features. And, you know, this is just a stick figure for time. So this is a neck, F8. Go in there. I'm going to adjust my pivot point. So now this neck is going to rotate like that along the torso, okay? I'm going to do the same thing for the upper torso. So I'm going to, and the torso, I'm just going to put the registration point right at the bottom from the start. Okay? That tells Flash. Okay, and that tells Flash that it wants that little X to be like right there at the bottom. So it saves us a little bit of time. If you're confused by the fact that there's two, on one side we have the registration point over here, and on the other side we have this other dot right here. This is called the rotation point. This is more for like previewing purposes and like runtime editing and stuff. So the registration point is the primary pivot. The rotation point is something that could be adjusted on the fly. So if I want to test something, I can do that. Okay, that's called the rotation point. If I double click on the rotation point, it's automatically going to jump to where my registration point is. Boom. And that gives us an accurate representation of how this character is going to bend. All right, so yes, all the body parts do need to be assembled before you convert them into body parts. Now, they don't have to be. I can show you what happens, okay? If I take this square here and I select it and I apply a body part, Puppet Producer is going to convert it into a symbol. It's going to configure it, and it's going to add the pivot point, but it's going to be guessing. At best, it's just going to be making an educated guess. So if you want to control where the pivot point lands, then go ahead and convert it to a symbol first and adjust the registration point. That's just like a pro tip, you know. You don't have to. Like, this is just a regular shape. It's not a symbol. I'm going to click on this torso. Boom. See, it converted it. You can see upper torso 0, but it placed the pivot point way up here. So it just threw it out there somewhere in the region. Now it's up to you to come in here and like, okay, maybe it should go there. And of course, for testing purposes, you know, Flash created the registration point in there. So when you try to test it, it's not very efficient. So I recommend just manually hit F8, convert it to a symbol, and adjust the registration. That way you have pretty much 100% control over how things are placed. Did you separate the head correctly with the eyebrows, mouth, ears? I don't think you did. This stuff is grouped. That's grouped. Let me break it apart and let's see. No, it's raw. Let me break that apart. No, it's raw. It's not. Yeah, that's on its own layer. Okay. Yeah, it's separated. Yeah, the separation is fine. Okay, yeah. You have the idea in terms of what items need to be separated. So, yeah, you're good. I mean, I think you did okay. So when I draw the layers, I will need to break the body parts into sprites. Yes, that's correct. You're gonna have, and I'll show you how to like optimize how you do that. Says okay, but they need to be symbols. No, they don't need to be symbols. You'll have to, whenever you convert them, Puppet Producer will convert it into a symbol. But I do highly recommend that you make them into symbols first. They don't need to be, but you'll save yourself a lot of time and effort and headaches if you go ahead and do it. But no, they don't need to be. Puppet Producer will still work with it. But they do have to be independent, like upper arm, forearm, hand. So here's the head, the neck, the torso that we just configured. The hip area, we're fine with that. We just put it in the center. Hit F8. Put the registration point in the center. We're done. We leave it there. Now, here's the leg. See, I just went ahead and clicked it. I didn't even convert it into a symbol first. I'll just go ahead and do that. I'm not gonna convert that one into a symbol. I'm just gonna click on that. Boom. All right. So it still works. It converts it for me, but it doesn't do the registration point where I need it to be, and I have to go hunt for the pivot point to bring it into place. So it's not always the most accurate way of working. So if we go to the foot, create it as a symbol first, adjust the registration point. So now we have a nice foot that bends like this from the start. Do that number. See how I put the pivot point there and the nut right there? This is like the handle. This is like the handle of the bone that's going to make it move left and right. And this is the rotation area. Okay. So I'm going to actually go back a couple steps. I'm going to break these apart, and I'm going to convert them into symbols first properly. F8. So yeah, no, they don't need to be symbols before you start working with it, but they do have to be separated. You know, you just have to know what you're getting into. You'll save yourself a lot of time if you just go ahead and create them as symbols first. And what I like to do is I just like working on half of the body. So here we go with that one. F8. F8. I don't even have to worry about the name. The name doesn't matter. So these, adjust the rotation point. I mean the registration point. Just pretend those are real body parts. Okay, so this one had already been converted into a symbol, but the hands are very special. The hands have nested hands inside of them. So this one, I'm going to double click. I'm going to take that one. I'm going to convert it into a symbol again. And that one doesn't matter where the pivot point is. So we'll go outside. I think that's all the body parts that I need for a full character. I mean, not counting the facial stuff. So I'm just going to assemble it real quick. I'm just placing the stuff the way it's supposed to, like where it's supposed to belong. Okay. So we can do a quick test. Okay, that's good. We take this arm, Control D, duplicates everything, Shift up, Shift left, puts everything back in the same spot, modify, transform, flip horizontal, keeps everything nice and aligned, and holding down Shift with the arrow keys allows me to quickly move that arm into its proper location. We're going to do the same thing with that other leg. Control D, Shift up, modify, transform, horizontal, and then shift right, 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 maybe a little bit more to the left, and now we have a full character. Once your full character is assembled, we can do a quick inspection here. Click on the head, there's no name. Click on that arm, there's nothing. As we click, we don't see anything. Alright, but it's all there. They're all movie clip symbols. Make sure you're using movie clip symbols. If you're using graphic symbols, it's not gonna work either. Well, it really is easy, man. You know, once you do this like once or twice, you're gonna increase your speed like dramatically. Trust me. So okay, so I mean, here's the full character. We did an entire character. I mean, you use your imagination, of course. This is a stick figure, but if I would have taken my time to draw like the body parts and stuff the way it's supposed to be, it'd probably be a nice looking character. So click on the head. Now, supposing we're working on just the front, okay, so you know, 0, 315, so you can see the angles that you're going to be working on. So make sure you have the proper angle enabled. In this case, it's the 0. So make sure the head is activated. Click on the head. Boom. You're going to get that red pivot point where the joint is going to rotate. That blue dot, that blue square, the nud, if you want, it doesn't really matter. You can leave it there. But what I like to do is I like to put it outside of the head, because that's kind of like the handle that makes the head twist and stuff. Now we're going to click on the neck. Then click on the neck. Every time you click on Puppet Producer, that little red dot should show up. If it doesn't show up, then go hunt for it, because maybe you didn't have it converted as a symbol first. So I probably just threw it there, and you got to go hunting and find it. If you set it up the way I did, then you can predict exactly where it's gonna go. It's gonna go right where that little X is. Upper body, hip. I need to zoom in. Hip region, thigh, leg, foot. Okay, so this did something wacky here. And that's because this had already had a name, so it kind of screwed up a little bit. We'll erase that. But I'll just kind of shift this forward. Just keep your eye out for those little hiccups, because sometimes when you have your stuff pre-named already, it'll go, well, I'm trying to add my pivot point to this leg, but this leg already has the foot named. Oh, it belongs here. Just kind of keep that in mind. It happens sometimes. So leg, shin, foot. This little eraser tool is really handy when you don't know how anything is configured. You just select what you want, click the eraser, it'll remove all the configurations from it, so you can just do it again. So now let's take a look at this arm. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, if you're doing the hands at that 45-degree angle, you might have to move the little nuts like this. In many cases, I make my hands pointing straight down. That way the alignment just goes straight down. I don't have to worry about adjusting stuff. But if you do it, you know, just bring those little nuts somewhere right here, because that's the handles that it's gonna, you know, that's the handles that's gonna make this stuff turn. I will. So this character is complete. We have a full character. Took us less than 10 minutes. So, I mean, it's a stick figure, but you know. So we're gonna select any character, any G2 character inside of CrazyTalk. So I mean, if you guys have seen a lot of those kung fu videos, those kung fu stick figure videos on YouTube, they're actually not that easy to make. They're done in Flash, one body part at a time, in multiple layers, and a lot of tweening and stuff. I mean, imagine doing those same type of stick figure animations with motion capture data. You know, just download a bunch of kung fu, like real life motion capture, and apply it to the stick figures. I mean, I think that would be so cool. So I have just a basic G2 character. Go into composer mode. And I think we need to publish this template first. We're going to save it. We're going to call it sticks. And we're gonna publish it. Control Alt Shift S. And we're gonna save it to the desktop. That should export an SWF movie file. Now that we have that SWF file, we'll click on the SWF button. We'll find it. Here it is. Sticks. Import it. Now there's gonna be, the hand is gonna be missing because I did forget one step. All right, but that's normal. That's predictable. I mean, that's we knew that was gonna happen because I want to be able to show you this. I'm gonna hide these bones. So we have the upper arm, we have the forearm, and the hand is missing. That's because the hands are special. They are nested. So even though the main hand itself is set up. Where is it? Right hand 0. Even though the main hand itself is set up, inside of it, it doesn't know what the hell it has. Okay, so this thing doesn't have any name. So we go inside of the nested hands. See, you can have up to 11 hand gestures. So in this case, we only have one on the first frame, but you can go second frame, that'll be the victory hand. Third frame, that'll be that 7 hand. Number 4, the fourth frame, you're gonna draw the OK hand. Stuff like that, all the way up to frame 11 if you want to have the full range of hands. Once you're done, just select the hand that you want to configure. Click, for example, relaxed. Boom. So that has been given the name relaxed. Now another thing that I'm looking at that, you know, may have not gone quite right is this pivot point. See, when I set up this initial one, I put the registration point right there for this forearm. So that was my mistake. I wasn't paying attention, but that's okay. I'll just move it up here because that's where that forearm is supposed to rotate around, right? And that is fixed, and we'll make this hand rotate around there. So that takes care of that. We'll export it again. Control Alt Shift S. Save, replace. Wait for it to finish. Go back to CrazyTalk. Click the SWF button. Import it. And everything should be fine now. Alright. Now this is just a one angle character. And since pretty much all the stuff is the same, I'm just going to cheat. I'm going to go to convert to multi-angle character. That's just gonna make sure that it duplicates all the sprites from that one angle into the other angles, so that you don't end up with like missing sprites whenever you do like complicated motions. I think it should be done. So let's test it. Oh, it's still doing something. So when we test it, so in theory, that's pretty much all you really need. See? So, I mean, we could just drop some motion capture data on this guy and make him do all sorts of fancy moves and stuff. So, I mean, theoretically, that's all you really need for building a character. You have the different body parts, convert them to a symbol, click the button in Puppet Producer, it'll configure it. As long as you have the main, these are the primary ones. You need the head, the neck, the upper torso, the hip, the thigh, the shins, the foot, upper arm, forearm, and hands. As long as you have those components, you're going to have a working character. Can you do a side movement? Like, you mean like turn to the side? I mean, they're the same sprite, so you probably won't see much of a difference. That's your 45-degree angle. That's your 90-degree angle. I mean, it's basically guessing. It's using the same sprites. I mean, you could probably go in here and adjust the sprites per angle just to kind of cheat a little bit since it's a solid But when you're doing a an actual drawn character, it's not gonna work that way because you're gonna be able to see the stuff in there. It works for the stick figure because it's solid. See, that's the back. But you know, you get what you put into it. You know, if you want, you can always, you know, go in there and make the other angles. It took us less than 10 minutes to make that front angle. You go in here and do the 45, then you go do the 90, you go do the 180-degree angle, and so on. It's just stick figures. It'll probably just take you an hour to do an entire 10-angle stick figure, you know, if you to have everything accurate. But it's good enough. I mean, the whole point of this is not to make a stick figure. The point of this is to demonstrate what you need in order to make a character, you know, and how to configure and how Puppet Producer is supposed to work. So, going back to your character, obviously there's something going on here. I don't know if it's on the Puppet Producer end, but it's not, you know, it's not doing what it's supposed to. It didn't drop the pivot points there, even though these are named as if they were pivots. So I find that weird. I don't know how it happened. Now, I will give you some tips on breaking this down, because in your case, let's see here. Actually, I'm going to show you guys a cheat. All right. Now, I don't want you guys doing this if you're not sure about certain things. It's a little bit more advanced. These are hidden under the hood. Orlando, yes, you have to draw the character in each angle that you want to be able to use. If you only do the front angle, then only expect your character to really look good from that front angle. The skeleton is still going to turn, it's still going to take the sprites with it, but if you haven't drawn a side angle, don't expect the side angle to magically show up, right? So, but the front sprites are going to be aligned as if it was a side. It's going to look weird. So only work with the angles that you have. If your character, you know, if your movie is only going to be, your character's only going to show up in a movie where, you know, he's going to be talking from a quarter view, then only do the quarter view. You don't have to do the front. You don't have to do the other stuff. But if you're going to have a reusable character that you want him to do all sorts of motions and stuff and just kind of make them work for the future, like for every possible motion, then yeah, go ahead and do all the angles. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go back. I'm going to show you guys an under the hood trick. These are all experimental features. There's no support on these. If you break something while you're using one of those, or if you mess something up, then, you know, I'm letting you know those are experimental features that I use for myself. They're not part of the main program. Otherwise, I would have put the buttons there so that you can use them. But here's the trick. You're going to click on the little information icon up here. Then you're going to click on this little beaker, like little experiment icon. Click on that once. You're not really going to hear anything. You're not going to see anything. So once you've done that, click anywhere on this image. Boom, you got 4 new buttons. So those are experimental features that I work with for my own usage. Now, one of those features is these the joint region, so I don't have to keep drawing one every time. I'll just click this button. Give it a minute. Yeah, it's not working. Okay, there it is. All right, it did it. It probably gave me that error because you already have something called joint. But there it is. It created a perfect little joint region for me that I can use as a as kind of like a testing area. So I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna use this to kind of guide myself. I'm gonna hide this. Create a new layer. So that actually, you know, it's not that bad. We're just kind of adjusting where we think these joints are going to be. Can you do an example video using Puppet Producer with all the angles, no questions from us, so that it's quick? That would be a very long video. I'm actually writing a book, so when that comes out, feel free to buy it. There's a lot of videos on my channel. Go to the Toon Titan forums. I think I have all the videos posted there in one thread. Or just type in, you know, Ibis Fernandez Puppet Producer, and you're gonna get the videos. A lot of my earlier videos are pretty much straight to the point. The ones that I'm doing now are more stream oriented because I want to be able to get feedback and questions in case, you know, I forget to answer certain things. It allows me to cover more information. So I'm only gonna worry about that. But yeah, I have complete videos on all the angles. I know I have a two-part one in Spanish as well. That's pretty much start to finish. But you know, the thing is, that the same way that I did that one angle, that's exactly the same process with all the other angles. There's nothing different. I mean, you do the same thing, and then you do it 8 more times, basically. In fact, you only do it like 3 more times because with Puppet Producer, you have the auto mirror function, which will mirror a lot of these angles for you. So you'll save yourself about 60% of the work. And that's covered in a lot of the earlier videos too. I think the primary video on the ToonTitan.com product page, that one has the full tutorial on working with it. I think it's only a couple hours long. It's not that bad. Okay, so the way I'm gonna do this one is, well, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get, because you started with the fully drawn character in that long video that I did that shows you how to do this. I pretty much took a lot of shortcuts where I was drawing as I went along, but in your case, you're pretty much just drawing your character, and from there, so there'll be a couple extra steps for you. And I mean, and there's so many ways that you can approach this. I know of at least 3 different ways that I could pull this off. Because one, I can go back and cut the body parts and assemble them. 2, I can create the joint system and then like trace from inside. So let's see. Let's try something. I'm gonna take this joint. It's already a symbol, but I'm gonna convert it into a symbol again. Okay, so it's gonna be a symbol within a symbol, because basically any modification that I do to this, it's gonna happen to these other ones, and I don't want that. Okay, so we're gonna leave that symbol alone. So we're gonna take that, select it, F8. Now it's a symbol. And we can call that the upper arm, right? So here, Let me sample your outline color and I'll sample your base color. So here I can come in and draw my upper arm. And I'm not gonna draw perfect, okay? I'm doing this for speed reasons. Okay, you take your time on your own artwork. You make it as best as you can be. So basically we have an upper arm. Now let's do the same thing for this forearm. We're going to take that, select it, hit F8, and because it's a perfect circle, it's automatically going to put that registration point in the center where it needs to pivot. So we go in there. So for my taste, Chase, the best way to do it is to just kind of recreate the artwork like this. That gives you more control over it. There's less editing involved. But the easiest way to cut up your character is to cut it up. I mean, there's really no way around it. I mean, you know that this is your character right here. So you're going to take the little rope tool, Control D. All right. And you're going to go like this. Control D. And you take that. So I have 3 pieces there. So of course, now you end up with cut up body parts that you kind of have to figure out how they fit together and how to make them smooth. Because once you start working with cut up pieces, you end up with little imperfections and jagged stuff. So that when you move, you end up like this. You can clearly see where the stuff is cut up. So if you want to avoid these type of things, the best thing that you can do is really just build around the joints. That way you know where the circular region is and just kind of retrace or something. But this is how you cut it up. And of course you can always go into the stuff and modify it and fix it, make it nice and round, and you know, so there's a million workarounds. So create a new layer, create a symbol, double click on the symbol to cut up the bottom. Yeah, pretty much you can just do that. That'll work perfectly fine. Alright, so let me close some of these little panels here because they're getting in the way. So like this, if I wanted to do a cut up, I could just grab it right there and sample it. Let me break off this timeline so I can copy. So I can work with that as well. So F8, that's my hand. So if I go into that hand symbol, new layer, I can right click, paste in center. And I can try placing it. And I could just erase around the little circular region there. So that's another way of working. So you could just cut the body part and put it into its proper joint. So that'll work too. To avoid jagged points, so create small joints would work to, well, to avoid the jagged points, you have to work with the circular region in mind. I mean, that's basically what you have. Let me open up a new clean file and I'll show you how joints work. So I have okay, let's pretend that's a well-drawn hand. All right, so I have that. Okay, and I'm gonna steal one of these from here. So we can use it as a guide. So we want this hand to rotate around there, and we want it to rotate perfectly. So we have to keep in mind that circular region in mind. The better you can adhere to that circular region, the better your character is going to be able to move without any like jagged areas. So we're going to try to work with that right there. So let's see here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn that into its own symbol. And I'm going to cut up this into 2 pieces. I'm going to cut it like roughly around that middle area there, just so I can have that part. You know what? I'm going to bring that with it. No, I'm not. Control X. I'm going to go inside of this symbol here. Paste in place. Oops. I don't think I cut it properly. Cut. Okay. So this will probably be the best way to demonstrate this. Okay, so right now we have a perfect alignment, but we know it's 2 different pieces, right? If I try to rotate this, we're going to see that jagged edges right there. So the secret is to work with this circle. So in your other piece of artwork, you just have to draw in a way that it lines up along this circular region. Okay. So we followed along the circle for the bottom joint, and then for the top joint, it's kind of sticking itself to the same area. so that when this thing is gonna move, it'll move like that. Let's get rid of this circle. So we can see it without the little circle thing. You just gotta keep those little things in mind, you know. Yeah, you know, I might start doing that at some point. Once I get more adjusted to doing them, this type of thing. I love doing them live. I like being able to just communicate with people live, and I hate editing, but I also hate marketing and having to do a lot of work. That's one of the reasons why I prefer to do the live thing, so I don't have to do a lot of editing. But yeah, once I get a little better at the streaming thing, I'm still getting a handle on the software and how to best manage the streaming things. I want to come up with a way to do this without the headset, you know, without the gaming headset. I don't have my area set up perfectly, you know, good enough for that yet. But you know, once I get everything set up nicely, I'll definitely you know, put a little bit more effort in like promoting it, and maybe like set up a schedule or something, you know, so people actually know to look forward to these type of things. Okay, so once you have this, I mean, if you look at how we built the joints, and this works for all the joints. Okay, the bottom joint is always try to make it round, or as much as possible, and the top one just leave it halfway there, or go in. As long as you don't go outside of that circle, you're gonna be good. Anything past that halfway point, keep it inside of that circle. It'll look decent. So look at that. You see? So you end up with a hand that kind of bends like that. And you get a pretty good bending out of it, and it doesn't look that bad. I mean, you're always gonna end up with this thing here, but it's not like, you know, it's not too crazy. And of course you can play around with it to just kind of, you know, make it work. So like, let's say you go like this. Maybe we'll play around with the drawing, just make it feel a little bit more organic. So we can do a little thing like that. See, that gives us a little bit of a elbow-ish looking thing, and then like the little bend. So, but on the outside, it's still kind of pixel perfect as far as the breaking is concerned. So, I mean, just play around with it. So that's one of the reasons why I like having the registration point within Flash itself, because that allows me to move the symbols around and just kind of test the articulations. Okay, so there you go. So that's how you avoid a lot of that stuff. Okay, so adjusting all the points and redrawing the points will carry over when you export it to CTA. Yeah, yeah. Basically, I mean, the reason that I do the Flash registration points is just to better control the way that I test my sprites, because this allows me to test it in Flash without having to go into CrazyTalk before I can see it in action, because I know my pivot point is going to be there. Now, if my pivot point, now as far as CrazyTalk is concerned, CrazyTalk is not going to pay attention to your registration point. It has no bearing on it. CrazyTalk is going to be looking for the pivot point. So if your pivot point is right here, so even if you tested your character so that it bends here, then once you bring it to CrazyTalk, it's going to rotate around this section here. That's why when you're working with Puppet Producer and you apply it, if you already have your registration point there, boom, it'll add the pivot point exactly where the registration point is. And if it doesn't, then you know what? Just find it yourself and put it there. Because this is what CrazyTalk is going to look at. CrazyTalk is going to be looking for this pivot point. But the registration itself here, that's for our own testing purposes. That's for our own development, you know, within Flash. That way we don't have to be going in and out of CrazyTalk all the time. Okay, so let's see here. All right, that's about 1 hour worth of video. I think we covered most of the main things. I mean, I don't know what exactly happened to your character to have caused you to name these as pivots. I suggest get rid of all these and just follow the construction stuff that I outlined, you know, my recommendations. You know, start building them with joints. Do that. Make sure your character is, you know, cut up into different parts, because this is what's going to allow your character to turn and move and stuff. So you have to separate it like this. And of course, once your character is set up, I mean, once your character is cut up, then, you know, it's just Puppet Producer will just take care of it, you know, just boom, boom, boom. Very easy work. So, I mean, I'm diving in this weekend with Puppet Producer things. Oh man, I can't wait to see some of your stuff, guys. I mean, by looking at this character, I can already see a lot of possibilities for this. So I can't wait to see the final character. And Orlando, man, whatever you put out, send me some screenshots, man. I want to start getting like a little gallery of stuff that people are doing with Puppet Producer. If you guys run into more issues and stuff, you know, send them my way. I'm gonna try to do turn this type of video into like a series, maybe every Friday. Call it Fix It Fridays or something, and I'll just have like different source files and stuff that you guys send me, and you know, analyze and see where you did, you know, where you made a mistake or whatever, and just get you guys going. I mean, once you get a handle of it, it's super easy, and you guys are gonna be creating characters like nothing. All right, any last questions before we end the stream? Anything that we may not have covered? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and where to buy Puppet Producer. Go to toontitan.com. You can get it from there. toontitan.com. Go to the software, the tools and software section. Let's see here. I think there might still be some coupons left. If anybody remembers what that coupon code is, we can give it out. I'm not sure if there's any left on that. Source files. Yeah. Go to the main website, toontitan.com, and click on Software and Specialty Tools. Scroll down, and Puppet Producer's right there. So, and there's the installation video, the how to use video. This is the one that I was telling you guys about. Watch this video. It has a lot of good information on actually working with it. It's not as long as that other one. That other one was more of a challenge for myself to sit there and do a full, complete, one angle character, but like in its final format. Because normally when I demonstrate stuff, I use very simple artwork like that stick figure that I just did earlier for time purposes. But on that other one, I wanted to just kind of challenge myself. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. If you have any questions, just send them my way. I'll compile a list of all your questions for like the technical stuff, and maybe we'll do another stream just like this one next Friday. Till then, I'll see you guys later.